Okay, let's jump right in. What if I told you there's a technology that can sift through these massive mountains of information all around us to find hidden connections, to see the invisible patterns that are quietly shaping our world? Well, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about data mining. And to really get a feel for its power, our story starts on the streets of Miami.
So picture Miami-Dade County. You've got the sun, the tourists, but you've also got a really serious problem. Street crime is on the rise. And at the exact same time, the police department is dealing with a shrinking budget, and a bunch of their most experienced detectives are heading into retirement. So you've got more crime to solve, but fewer cops to do it.
And this quote from Lieutenant Arnold Palmer just nails the problem. Right? The challenge was huge. How in the world could they possibly do more with less? You know, the old ways of doing things just weren't going to cut it anymore, especially when all that veteran know-how was literally walking out the door.
So, what did they do? They turned to data. They built this amazing custom tool called Blue Palms. The idea was pretty groundbreaking at the time. They wanted to use data mining to dig through years and years of old crime reports, looking for hidden patterns and connections. Basically, a crime signature, to try and predict where and when the next one might pop.
And you know, they got some incredible results right out of the gate, which really helped build trust in the system. Get this, one skeptical, old-school detective had a gut feeling about a suspect. They ran the data through Blue Palms, and boom, his guy was in the top 5. In another case, a carjacking had gone completely cold. No witnesses, no video, nothing. The system spit out a list of likely suspects, and the person at number 1, that was the guy. It actually worked.
So what the Miami-Dade police were doing, finding those game-changing connections in their crime data, that is a perfect, real-world example of a much bigger field. They were in essence data mining. They were digging for valuable hidden knowledge that was already buried in their own records.
And here's a pretty good formal definition of what that is. But let's break it down into plain English. Valid just means the patterns you find aren't a fluke. They'll actually work on new data. Novel means you're finding something you didn't already know, a real discovery. And useful and understandable, well, that's the most important part. It has to make sense and actually help you do something in the real world.
Now, data mining isn't just one single thing. It's more like a recipe that pulls ingredients from a bunch of different, really powerful fields. You can see here it sits right at the intersection of statistics, AI and machine learning, and database technology. It kind of takes the best bits from all of them to find those hidden gems in the data.
A question I hear all the time is, hey, isn't this just a fancy word for statistics? And the answer is, not really. The biggest difference is the starting point. See, with statistics, you usually start with a very specific question, a hypothesis like, does smoking cause cancer? And then you collect a sample of data to test it. Data mining is different. It starts with a much broader goal, like, let's see what interesting things are hiding in our sales data. It uses all the data you have to uncover patterns you might have never even thought to look for.
So, when we talk about finding these patterns, what do we really mean? What does that look like? Well, for the most part, data mining is looking for 3 main kinds of relationships that are buried deep in the data.
First up, you have associations. This is all about finding things that tend to show up together. The absolute legendary example of this is the beer and diapers thing. A grocery store chain analyzed its sales data and discovered something weird. On Thursday nights, guys who came in to buy diapers were also incredibly likely to grab a 6-pack of beer. The data doesn't tell you why, it just tells you that it happens.
Second, we have clusters. This is super cool. It's about letting the data find its own natural groups without you telling it what to look for. So instead of you creating categories, the algorithm does it for you. A classic use is in marketing. You can analyze what everyone's buying, and the system might automatically discover different types of customers, like, say, weekend DIYers or new parents.
And third, we have predictions. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You use the data you have from the past to make a really good guess about the future. And this should sound familiar because it brings us right back to where we started. This is exactly what that Blue Palm software was doing for the Miami-Dade police. It was analyzing past crimes to predict future ones. Now, I know all of this might sound a little bit like magic, but I promise you it's a science. Good data mining isn't just a shot in the dark. It follows a very structured, repeatable process. There's actually a standard blueprint that people use to go from a simple business question all the way to a working solution. And that blueprint is called CRISP-DM. It stands for the Cross-Industry Standard Process for Data Mining, and it makes so much sense when you look at it. You start by understanding the business problem you're trying to solve, then you have to understand your data. Then comes the really hard part, preparing it, cleaning it up. That can take forever. Only then do you get to build and test your models, and finally you deploy the solution so people can actually use it. It's a journey for sure.
So we started this whole thing with a story about fighting crime, right? But what I really want you to see is that this same process, this hunt for hidden patterns, is happening in pretty much every single industry you can imagine.
I mean, think about it. Banks are using it constantly to spot fraud. Your favorite store uses it to figure out what to put on the shelves and where to put it. In healthcare, it's finding new connections between symptoms and diseases. And yeah, even Hollywood is using it to predict which movies are going to be blockbusters and which ones are going to bomb.
And speaking of movies, how good can these predictions get? Well, check this out. One model was able to predict a movie's box office success on a scale from total flop to massive blockbuster with over 90% accuracy of being either spot on or just one step away. And the mind-blowing part? This is before a single scene of the movie has even been filmed.
And look, this really isn't just some fun academic thing. As the Nobel Prize winner Dr. Arno Penzias said years ago, at this point, data mining is a must-have to stay competitive. At the end of the day, it's about using the information you already have to make smarter and faster decisions.
But all of this power brings up a really, really important question. We started with police predicting criminals. We've seen how it can predict the movies you'll like or the things you'll buy. So as these tools get more and more powerful, the big challenge for all of us becomes, where do we draw the line between a useful insight and an invasion of privacy? That's the conversation we all need to be having.